Danielle will have 5 modern dances to complete for her medal. First dance is the foxtrot.
In the Northern Territory, they use more military cartridges than the Australian Army. It's war. War against an animal invader. 3 years ago, there were 300,000 wild water buffalo in the top end. Descendants of a few dozen, introduced last century to be beasts of burden and a source of meat. In 3 years, that huge population has been halved by round-up to abattoirs and hunting. More than 20,000 animals were shot to waste because the country was inaccessible to pet meat contractors. In the next 2 years, another 30,000 are to be dealt with the same way for the same reasons. Animal activists have condemned the aerial shooting as cruel. There has also been widespread concern about the waste of the resource.
It'll completely destroy it. There won't be a buffalo industry up here at the rate these fellows are going.
The explanation of why a potentially valuable animal must be hounded out of the Northern Territory is simple. It is a host to the disease tuberculosis, and that is a threat to Australia's $3.5 billion export beef industry. Also, unchecked, the buffalo is capable of wreaking terrible damage on the environment.
TB is a disease which can spread from cattle to humans, and in fact, national eradication programs started way back in the 1930s because TB in cattle was the main source of TB in humans. So it's a public health hazard, and also it's a meat quality situation that we need to eradicate TB to produce high quality meat for domestic and export usage.
The official aim is to remove buffalo from the 100,000 square kilometres of coastal margin, where up to 10% of the animals are infected with TB. A lot of the country is inaccessible. Helicopter shooting is seen as the only way, but only as a last resort.
Well, that's an assessment made by our field staff that have got substantial experience in the industry. Many of them have been buffalo catchers or worked in the buffalo industry prior to joining us, and they make a judgment that it's no longer economic to continue harvesting, and so shooting commences.
Before a stock inspector joins the team of around 40 marksmen who do the shooting, he must attain 80% accuracy in a training course.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to.
This is the first time a television camera has been allowed up with the shooters. The authorities want people to understand that although unpleasant, the means are justified by the end. After the elephant, the water buffalo is probably the hardest-headed animal in the world, perhaps the hardest to shoot. But once targeted, not one escape. It is a nasty business, but it's done with precision, skill, and professionalism. Animal liberation accepts the underlying reasons for the killing, but not the methods.
I can't accept there's not an alternative at all. I've had so many reports from station owners, from buffalo hunters, pet meat hunters that have said that given time that they could go in and clear out the areas themselves.
Gloria Devon mobilised public opinion on the issue last year and continues to demand a public inquiry. Where recoverable, shot animals yield $100 worth of pet meat. Nothing shot is used for human consumption. Animals for processing through abattoirs come from farms or are captured alive in the wild. Territory buffalo farmers have devised a way of capturing their breeding stock in the wild that combines top-end innovation with classic top-end recklessness. It is a job that is always dangerous.
Your menu, sir.
Thank you very much. Buffalo steak. Why not? It'd be 5 times the price in Europe. The succulent meat is already on Darwin, Asian, continental and US menus. Farming the buffalo for human consumption is a $9 million a year industry which aims to have 50,000 animals behind wire in TB-free areas within a few years.
You can maintain buffalo in this country without doing much detriment to the countryside and also make a profit from the buffalo, which will help the territory in the country as well, especially in view of the improved markets and the very high demand for buffalo meat, for example, in Germany, which I understand is about $33 a kilo now.
Do you foresee a growth in this industry?
I hope there would be, yes.
Graziers such as Rod Ansell, who've had the bad luck to be in areas compulsorily destocked because of TB, say the eradication campaign is a waste. They are angry at the way the resource is being treated. Ansell claims buffalo numbers are being so reduced that there soon won't be enough to maintain just one abattoir full-time. The billion-dollar anti-TB campaign is being funded by the cattle industry and state and federal governments. Ansell says it is a giant mistake.
The TB test itself doesn't work on buffalo. Right? That's been proven time and time again here. It's not an effective test for buffalo. It would be much simpler to remove the few cattle that are in buffalo country than all those buffalo.
But there is one place in the territory where there is agreement that the buffalo had to go. Kakadu, or to use the Aboriginal pronunciation, Gagadoo. 1/4 the size of Victoria. 12,500 square kilometres of World Heritage. Unique. A wet, dry tropical park containing an entire river system and protected from the escarpment to the sea. It's Northern Australia's biggest attraction. 185,000 people, many from abroad, visited last season. The wild water buffalo nearly wrecked this tourism jewel. 10 years ago, 50,000 of the half-ton beasts ranged across Kakadu, denuding the earth and churning it with wallows. Sheet erosion left moonscapes where there should have been lush mats of sedge and lakes of water lilies.
If one is trying to maintain natural environments, as we are doing in Kakadu National Park, yes, I think it was essential to eliminate them.
During a decade of destocking, just in Kakadu, 40,000 buffalo have been rounded up to abattoirs, while 20,000 in inaccessible areas have been shot. At least 20,000 more have still to be removed, but the recovery of the landscape has been dramatic.
Hands to boarding station. Hands to boarding station.
At sea, off the northern edge of Australia, it's no longer a matter of exercise. Indonesia, poor, populous and mysterious to most Australians, is just 130 kilometres away. A few days sailing for the little fishing prows. Between March and November, the subsistence fishermen of Roti, Sulawesi and Tundu leave the exhausted grounds of their homeland. They chance their lives on finding enough shark, trocus shell and trepang to support their families for a year. The return cargo is worth but a few $100s. It has been this way for hundreds, if not thousands of years. But now Australia, which owns the territory, is closing the door. From the 1st of July, the nature reserve status of Ashmore Reef will be enforced, including a ban on fishing and diving for trepang and trocus. It's not the value of the fish that is leading Australia to assert ownership and exclude interlopers. It's energy and conservation, particularly energy. From here must come the oil and gas to fuel Australian prosperity into the next century.
I think it's very important. There's a lot of resources over here, natural resources, and it's very close to our northern neighbours. And I think if there was going to be any confrontation in the future, this is very likely to be the area.
We are aboard an Australian patrol boat. It's a new, disciplined ship with modern electronics. But its main armament is a World War II-style Bofors gun. Indonesia's huge navy has Exocet missiles on some of its patrol boats.
We don't know an awful lot about them. They have a lot of modern gear, modern equipment, huge numbers in their military forces, so they are a force which should not be taken lightly.
300 kilometres of the seabed boundary between Australia and Indonesia has never been confirmed. The two nations are technically in dispute over this economically and strategically important zone. Conservation is a major concern along Australia's northwest border. The Department of Territories pays Laurie and Annie Sexton $250,000 a year to be here in their converted trawler, flying the flag and keeping watch. They have no power to shoot or arrest. They are here to be seen, ask questions and report. It was Laurie who detected the wildlife offences at the weekend. They are told the law, asked where they are from and what they are taking. The surveillance is shared by the Navy and visiting officers from the Department of Territories.
How are they feeling? Any illness or that sort of thing in the crew?
Well, if you ask that question, mate, they're always going to want something.
Are they?
The Australian authorities are not only concerned with the natural resources along this long frontier, there's also a worry about human and animal health. This well, for example, is infected with cholera, a disease most Australians think is absent from their country. Australian quarantine officials are worried about the possibility of a serious human or animal disease crossing this long coastline.
Prior to us establishing an Australian presence here, I think that the infrequent visits of patrol boats led to the situation where the Indonesian fishermen could fairly freely get amongst the birds and eggs and do as they pleased. And they have been caught on a number of occasions doing that. Now, since we've been here...
They see them as food, do they?
Well, yes, they do. It's very much the case. They travel from home for a couple of months at a time, and all they leave with is rice, and they eat the rice and the fish that they catch on the way.
Are you having much success in stopping them plundering the island, as it were?
I think we're having a large degree of success. Last year there was no detected offences, and this year there's been a couple, but overall we've had probably near 60 boats this year, and if 2 or 3 of those boats have stepped out of line, it still is a sizeable way to achieving our goal.
At Ashmore Reef there are 3 islets. 2 teem with bird life. Migratory birds Australia is pledged to protect under international conventions. Some are listed as endangered. Maybe all should, because traditionally Indonesian fishermen have treated this place as a larder, eating the eggs and taking the birds for meat. After weeks of rice and fish at sea, their attitude is perhaps understandable, but no longer condoned.
We've had a continuing problem with the Indonesian people coming ashore and destroying birds and birds' nests and birds' eggs.
How do you deal with it?
Well, it's a difficult thing to deal with because of the communication barrier. I mean, I think most Australians are fairly sensitive to conservation and are aware of the need to protect wildlife and such, but Indonesian people, I don't think, have that ethos.
There is evidence hereabouts, remnants of bird carcasses stripped of meat. There's also a litter of eggshells, incriminating because the hatch of chicks is not due for many weeks. The alleged discovery of bird meat and eggs aboard an Indonesian boat at the weekend provoked an arrest, the first for such offences. The tow to Darwin for prosecution is now underway. From July the 1st, the nature reserve status of the islands will be further enforced. Landing, except for water, will be prohibited. There'll be no more fishing allowed inshore. The wildlife is already wholly protected. King Sound on the West Australian coast. This is a zone of total exclusion to allow the Bardi tribe to make a living from trochus shell. The community of 300 earns $100,000 a year this way. Indonesian boats caught off here by patrols are arrested. The tribe has been reported as threatening to kill poachers, but that's denied.
The thing is, we wouldn't kill Indonesians just coming on our waters. I mean, we kill something, we eat.
Although the Bardi say they'll abide by the law, Sandy Isaac isn't so sure about the operators of a nearby $10 million cultured pearl industry.
I mean, what if the Indonesians come across and start picking their shells?
What do you think he'd do?
I reckon he'd blow them out of the water.
One aspect of Australia's northern boundary is not being discussed so freely. Smuggling, particularly drugs. Coastwatch aircraft fly only during daylight. When the Navy patrols, its radar operates constantly, but the Navy can't be everywhere. Customs officers speak privately of shrinking resources, of not knowing how big the smuggling problem is, and of how little is detected.
Imagine this. You're driving home from work and there's an accident. No one's seriously hurt, everyone's insured, but as a law-abiding citizen, the other party reports the accident to the police. 2.5 hours later, you're at home, settling the nerves with a few stiff ones.
Good afternoon, sir. Are you John Smith?
Yes, I am. What's the problem?
Oh, no problem, sir. Were you the driver of a car, a yellow Sigma, registered DFT 197, which was involved in an accident about 1 o'clock today?
Yes, that's right.
Have you had a drink today, sir?
Yes. I think I've had two or three scotches. Oh, but since I've come home though,
Sure.
because I was a bit upset, and shaky from the accident.
Well, because you've been in an accident that's been reported, it is a requirement by law that you take a breath test.
Under the Road Safety Act, you could avoid this situation by simply not answering the door. That's your right. But if you're a law-abider like most of us, and you don't know the law, you could end up in court without a driver's licence.
The reading that's obtained, either on the analysis of the blood or the analysis of the breath, is deemed to be the reading that you had at the time of driving.
You can be tested up to 3 hours after a crash, and if the reading is over the limit, no matter when in that 3 hours you did your drinking, you will be charged. And if you had 10 witnesses to prove your innocence, it's no defence. The court can't take it into consideration. When this section was debated, the Law Institute and the Bar Council took a dim view.
We pointed out, at least the Victorian Bar pointed out, the shortcomings and the tremendous erosion into the traditional liberties that subjects had had.
But surely asking someone not to drink anything 3 hours after an accident isn't asking too much.
Well, that's fine in the isolation of clinical atmosphere of a studio or wherever, but there are cases where people are taken in by very good intentioned bystanders or residents, and it seems to be automatic that when a person appears to be shaken, they give them alcohol. And the people, of course, are not in a condition to know what they're doing anyway as a result of the shock of and the trauma of the accident. So it's one thing to say what it ought to be and another thing in reality to see what happens.
And the inevitable has happened. Ray Lindstrom runs the cinema and the disco in Castlemaine, north of Melbourne. A father of 3, he's also vice president of the local Blue Light Committee. He runs unlicensed discos for the local youth. He has a good reputation in the community, and today he's handing in his driver's licence. He's been disqualified for a year. The local police aren't too comfortable about it. The local magistrate said he found the whole case most distasteful. And Ray isn't too thrilled about it either. You see, he's adamant he hadn't been drinking.
I was just sort of, amazed, that how can I be innocent but guilty?
Last October, Ray was driving home after a long Friday night at work. He lives about 6 kilometres from town. Ray's a dog lover, so when a big one jumped out in front of him, presumably from the nearby kennels, he swerved to miss and hit a tree. He couldn't find the dog, the truck was damaged, so he walked the last kilometre home. His knee felt painful and it was bitterly cold.
It took me about at least 3/4 of an hour. I was so cold and shaken that I sat down and my wife got me a drink, and
That was a whiskey?
yes, and I had that, and I had another one.
It wasn't until after he'd downed a couple of drinks that he looked at his knee.
The knee was just opened up. The scar, you see, it's like it just opened up. I took one look at it, and all I saw was bone or the kneecap, and that was it. I was completely...
He was rushed to hospital and had 21 stitches. The hospital, as usual, reported the accident, and a sample of Ray's blood was taken for the mandatory test. It was less than 3 hours since the crash. And about 4 months later, he got a letter from the Road Traffic Authority.
Got a letter saying that I was 0.122, and I thought it was a little bit high, but the amount of whiskey I did drink was straight. It would be close to that.
The magistrate heard witnesses and read references supporting Ray's story and his character. Even the prosecuting sergeant didn't try to bring a case against him. But the law was set in concrete.
There was evidence, sworn testimony, quite apart from his statement, independent evidence that he had had not a drop of alcohol to drink that night.
So there was no question of him being drunk while he was driving?
None whatever.
So the magistrate, the prosecution and the defence...
At the disco, that is the only place to be. At the disco, Italian, Greek or Lebanese. At the disco, if you're under 17. At the disco, at the disco.
The appeal of Wogs Out of Work is its ability to break into and relate to a huge ethnic market which didn't exist in Australia earlier this century. Changing lifestyles and wider acceptance of multiculturalism has also changed the trend in theatre, to the point where Wogs Out of Work, written and performed by Simon Palomares, Nick Giannopoulos and Maria Portesi, is rapidly becoming one of the most successful theatre productions staged in Australia.
You know, Signora, I'm here a long time too, eh? But I don't see you before. No. I work night shift. My husband, he work night shift. No, I work night shift, my husband work night shift. Much better like this. Much better. The children never alone. You know, sometimes my husband with the children, sometimes me with the children. Much better. How old are your children, Signora? 19 and 24. Yeah.
Wogs Out of Work is what the show's called. It's basically the situation we found ourselves in about 1.5 years ago, when we found that we couldn't, as ethnic actors, we found it very hard to get work in mainstream television and film because of the lack of roles that existed for people of ethnic origin, particularly with all the historical epics that were being made at that time. And as you know, migrants didn't arrive in this country before 1950. So, of course, we couldn't work in any period piece that existed before 1950. The basis behind the Wogs Out of Work, also that we wanted to demystify that very word that we had grown up with at school.
The migrant community now has got the confidence to do that, laugh at themselves safely, whereas we couldn't do it, say, 10 years ago because we didn't have that confidence.
So do you think that we'll see in the future perhaps Vietnamese theatrical productions that everyone will be laughing at?
Well, I hope so.
I hope so.
I think what we need at the moment is something like an Aboriginal Wogs Out of Work to demystify a lot of the Aboriginal issues, like Wogs Out of Work is doing with ethnic humour.
Those associated with Wogs Out of Work are reluctant to talk about the financial success of the production, although industry sources suggest it has grossed between $2 and $3 million in a year. It's the cultural significance that the producers and performers see as the major factor, and it's quite obvious that this form of entertainment, or concept theatre as Nick terms it, is the theatre of the future.
Well, concept theatre.
Explain that, actually, Nick. I really want to hear this.
I was really drunk when I said it, but I know what it means. Basically, what Wogs Out of Work has done is it's brought people back into the theatre it's basically brought people into the theatre who've probably never been there before, okay? Fairly working class, sort of middle class people who've never quite seen theatre as being as accessible to them as it can be. I think theatre has a very elitist reputation in this country, mistakenly so because it's got so much to offer, as Wogs Out of Work has shown. I think most people these days prefer to go to the pictures or spend a night at home in front of the television set. And hopefully shows like Wogs Out of Work will entice them to come back to the theatre.
The audience just recognises themselves so much with the show and relates to it so closely that you know, there is a lot of excitement, a lot of energy coming from the audience, and that's actually one of the things that makes the show work.
There's at least one character in the show that someone will recognise.
Yeah.
Hey, you know that Kylie Minogue? She's a spunk, mate. Hey, I'm gonna marry her.
Do you think she's a virgin? Yeah, because my mother's a virgin. She told me, all right. So I'm sitting there watching Neighbours, you know, and then it hits me, Ma. You know, I'd like to know where that Ramsay Street is. Yeah, because it must be the only place in Australia that hasn't got a Wog family in it.
Kylie Minogue, where's your salami? Then there's the prosciutto-popping drug musician whose life is in turmoil. For Anglo-Saxons and Wogs alike, the message is united.
Hey, Harry, you want to do a line? Whoa. Big man all of a sudden, Vinny, huh? Dropping prosciutto now, are we?
Stop it!
Josie, just take it easy. It's your first time, Josh. Just take it easy. Josie, you're gonna be sick. Josh, no, Josh, no. Don't mix it with a cabana, Josh. Don't mix it with a cabana. No, Josh, not the big prosciutto.
Knock, knock, knocky on heaven's door. Knock, knock, knocky on heaven's door.
It seems the door is open and the time right to exploit the market even further with the possibility of an ethnic comedy series on our television screens.
Crawford's approached us a while ago to come up with a concept for them for a television show. We suggested a situation comedy series, and it'll be a first on Australian television. And for Crawford's, I think it's wonderful. I mean, they've produced such terrific sort of product like Sullivan's, and I mean, it's taking them into a completely different direction.
We're not going out to do a WOG show on TV. What we're doing is just representing the Australian community.
It's going to be a show about Australia.
Power of the WOG.
Look, the show, as Simon's saying, is contemporary Australian characters who happen to have an ethnic background. There are Australians in the show as well. The thing is, what we're not going to set out to do is identify them as WOG stereotypes, okay?
Hey, they're smart bastards, aren't they, eh? Hey, I should know, right? I used to work with a whole bunch of them, right? For 10 years, up at the Ugg Boot factory in Newtown. You know those ugly bloody sheepskin things, you know? Yeah, geez, we were the biggest bludgers you'd ever seen, right? Yeah, whenever the boss used to piss off for the afternoon, we'd sit back, crack open a few tinnies and argue on whether the Greeks had bigger dicks than the Turks. Hey, whenever I mention Australian dicks, they all laugh.